Attorney General Pam Bondi might absolutely be saying 100% the truth right now. And she may say, we have looked over this information and there's nothing.
But show us the information you looked over.
Show us the information you looked over, number one. And number two, then it should have also been spoken about it during the election in the same regard that they're speaking of it now. Well, it's not really that big of a deal. Let's just move on. Nothing to see here. It was used as a carrot for votes.
And the MAGA base feels like they got conned. If there's really nothing there, then it was a con job. If there is something there, there's a cover-up, as you said.
And I think that regardless, obviously the president is standing by the attorney general, and this will test his base, and that it'll test it not necessarily that they are going to not vote Republican or support the Republican Party. However, I do think they will now have a little bit more of a skeptical view, essentially, of saying, well, wait a minute. Now we have something that we felt like you have misled us on.
There's a call, but one quick point. I hope you saw that all the cameras that were following Jeffrey Epstein through the jail he was in, only one actually recorded anything. The cameras were live, but the one that recorded him didn't record him. So there's no recording of him being led into his cell.
I want to throw out two more things in the story, and then we'll grab some calls. Maxwell and Epstein both were, Epstein was until he died, in custody for these crimes. There are lists of victims of these crimes. It seems inconceivable that Epstein could have done all of this himself.
That's an excellent point.
So who were the perpetrators of these crimes? Right. On top of that, podcasters from the right who were saying we need to investigate this as recently as this weekend seem to have gotten some phone calls from Trump over the weekend, and then on Monday came out to say, you know what, we're going to move on from this topic.
Yeah, woman, she wants to testify. Yeah. She wants to talk.
Right.
His right-hand woman that was sort of his wingman, so to speak.
Is this
Maxine.
Ghislaine.
I can never say her last name right.
I can't say her first name. Maxwell is her last name.
Okay.
Ghislaine.
Maxwell.
Somebody help us. Derrick does want to say something. Derrick is calling us from West Houston. It's 713-440-8870. Derrick, what's on your mind?
Hey there, guys. Thanks for talking about this really important topic. So my name is Derrick Broze. I've been an independent journalist in Houston for the last 15 years, and I made a documentary about Jeffrey Epstein back in 2018 called Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein. I've been enjoying the MAGA Civil War because I'm not a MAGA guy, so I'm sort of enjoying what's happening. But I just wanted to make it clear because the main reason people are concerned is because, as was mentioned, both Democrats and Republicans, including Donald Trump, were associated with Epstein going back to the 80s. Bill Clinton flew on the plane, 27 times. So I think the concern here is that whether it's a Trump cover-up or, Democratic cover-up, that we're never really going to know the truth of who those perpetrators were you guys were just talking about. Epstein was facing time for trafficking young girls, and Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for that, but none of the actual people who were receiving the girls have been found guilty. There's connections from people like Leslie Wexner, who is the owner of the Limited Brands, who is very close to Jeffrey Epstein and sold him his house in New York City. There's a lot of people who haven't been questioned or brought in, or even interviewed. And so I think that's sort of why the public is looking at this and saying, okay, there's high-profile people, celebrities, politicians connected to this billionaire pedophile, and we're just being told, forget about it, there's nothing to see here. And it's kind of hard, I think, for people to just go about their lives thinking that high-profile, powerful people might have been associated and maybe even involved with things like that, and then thinking they can just go about their normal lives. So I just wanted to offer that.
Derrick, before we let you go, I'm curious. You said that you did this documentary and you've been investigating this story for a while. I'm curious your thoughts on, because I've heard people say there would have never been a list of the clients because that would have been too detrimental if it got out for anyone, so that there was no client list. What are your thoughts on that?
That is exactly true, and that's something I've been telling my listeners for years, that the idea that there was just some list that said Epstein client list sitting at the FBI or something, I think that was kind of a red herring that Trump threw out during the campaign. Now, of course, we do have Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book and Ghislaine Maxwell's Black Book, which, by the way, lists 16 numbers of Donald Trump. We have the flight logs. We have memos that talk about massages, and a lot of that information has never been released. So, I mean, technically, you could gather up all that information, you could get the names there and bring those people for questioning. It doesn't mean, of course, anybody in his black book is guilty, but there still is, if the FBI or anybody wanted to investigate it, that would be the place to start. But the idea that there's just some list sitting around, that's definitely false.
A few months back, I believe Wired magazine had done a search into phone locators that showed travel to and from the island and could pinpoint where the phones came from, and that these people, the residents basically, and then to the island. Do we know any more about that? They were doing that search. I don't know how far they went with it, but they had a good number of people that they were tracking through their cell phone locators. What do you know about that?
Yeah, I saw that reporting, and I think that is another great place to start, the people who visited the island. Of course, that doesn't necessarily prove guilt of anything, but, we don't know what investigations may still be ongoing, but according to the Trump DOJ, this is it. They're saying it's all done. There's going to be no further investigations, no further releases. So it just seems like, again, another thread that may never be pulled.
Hey, Derrick, one quick question, and we'd love to have you on, so leave your number with our producers. But let me ask you this. How many young girls were victims of this guy, and why have none of them come forward and said, hey, I was one of the girls that was trafficked, and this is the person with whom I slept?
So we have had some of them come forward. You have Virginia Gouffre, who recently died allegedly of a suicide. There's some questions around that. You have Maria Farmer. There's some other women who have come forward, and even some of the women who were trafficked eventually ended up helping Epstein, like Sarah Ransom. And in some of those court testimonies, they did mention, seeing Bill Clinton, at a party or something like that. But I think the reason some of those details may have never come out outside of, say, podcasts or even these women's private conversations is because they were also sworn in some cases to secrecy through non-disclosure agreements. We know that Epstein originally, back when he was first arrested in 2005, he had a non-disclosure and a non-prosecution agreement. And actually in Trump's first administration, when he had his labor secretary, Alexander Acosta, during his confirmation hearing, he was in Florida, and he was part of the original sweetheart deal, and he said that he was told that Epstein was intelligence, and so they couldn't go any further of it. So I think that's another reason why some people may be afraid to speak out.
Derrick, thank you very much for your thoughts on this. I do want to point out, though, the Justice Department does have the ability to void a non-disclosure agreement, so that can be taken care of in that situation. The important thing to remember is that there were young victims of this crime, and I think we get so caught up in the salaciousness of the story and what could happen that we forget that there are victims who were sexually trafficked and abused. We do know that much, I believe, from the information that we can officially say.